Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Brews. I'm your host, Commander Claw, and we are in the Tarkir Dragonstorm spoiler season. And yes, I'm bringing you Kotis the Fangkeeper. It is a zombie warrior, and let's just talk about the art. Honestly, it looks like a merfolk. It gives me merfolk, jaded warrior merfolk vibes from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, more than a zombie warrior that's Sultai. But we're gonna stick with the theme here. It's probably my fault because I haven't read the entire lore behind this set. So, Coates is the Fangkeeper, Sultai Commander, black, green, and blue. It has Theft Cast, which is the theme where you cast other players' spells. So we're gonna bring you cards that have that type of theme going on. Honestly, this commander is villainous wealth on a creature. Okay, the creature is indestructible, which that's the first thing I feel like you see. You just see indestructible and you see text, and that is not good for your opponents. It caught my interest. Indestructible, then whenever. Ooh, those two words are gonna be gross. Whenever you see whenever, most likely you want to play with it. Whenever, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So, without further ado, I am ready to talk about Kotis the Fangkeeper and how I recommend you probably should build it. And it's going to be a Voltron commander. But as time goes on, I think that could change. So let's talk about him. A Sultai commander for one, black, green, and a blue, 2/1 body zombie warrior. It has indestructible. Okay? It says whenever Kotis deals combat damage to a player, exile the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of damage dealt. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. So, if you hit your opponent with 2 power, you can only exile the top 2 cards and cast spells that are 2 CMC or less. So the goal is to beef up the power, buff up the power of Kotis the Fangkeeper. We want to make him a 5/5 or a 5/4, a 7/6, a 10/9, a 21/20 if we can. So we can have a really good time casting our opponent's spells. That means more cards from the top of their library and more spells you can play. Because it says you may cast any number of spells. Any, any, any. If this guy's a 21/20, there's no card out there that costs 21 mana. Now there's a 16 mana, Draco, yeah. Hit that like button if you remember that. I just literally thought about that at the top of my head. Crazy, crazy work. I've been playing this game for a minute. But anyway, here's some must-add cards if you plan on building King Kotis the Fangkeeper. So, Villainous Wealth, X and Sultai colors. Sorcery, target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. Great card. Uh, to be honest with you, the way it feels when you get hit with this card is like you're just hoping the person who cast this does not get something good. It's not a good feeling. It's really not. You'll make enemies with this card. You'll make enemies because guess what? If you have something good in your deck and they're going to play it straight up. There's no and ifs buts around it. Like how much mana they paid for this does not equal to what they can cast. It just doesn't. Just doesn't. Next up, we got Felix Five-Boots. Felix Five-Boots for 2 Sultai color 5/4 Ooze Rogue. Menace Ward 2. If a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I don't know why I had to do that. Had a little fun. Had a little fun. Yeah, this bad boy, it's a menace. Not on the keyword either. Ward 2, this works well with Kotis. You're doing its triggered ability twice. Twice. So imagine if you added a psionic resonator too. That's another option for you to trigger Kotis the Fangkeeper's ability again. So let's talk about cards to buff up its power. So look, you got to give him double strike. Because if you give him double strike, you trigger it twice. Because it says whenever it is combat damage to a player, and if the player doesn't have any blockers, double strike deals damage to that player twice. Nasty. Double strike, double strike. To be honest with you, I've been Googling a lot of double strike cards, and there's not many. There's not many. There's not. There's not in artifacts. Artifacts are not common. There's like 5 artifacts out here that have double strike that you can equip your creature with. Next up is Gavel the Righteousness. This is for those who want to use a proliferate theme to really give Gavel the Righteousness its maximum potential. For 2 mana, artifact equipment, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a charge counter on Gavel of the Righteousness. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on Gavel of the Righteousness. As long as Gavel of the Righteousness has 4 more counters on it, equipped creature has double strike. Equip by paying 3 mana or remove a counter from Gavel of the Righteousness. Another card to give you double strike. Yes, moving on to more buffing effects. So, Necrosynthesis for 1 and a black, enchantment aura. Enchant creature has whenever another creature dies, put a +1 counter on this creature. So, yeah. If your opponent has a wide board state and you board wipe, all those creatures die and you get all those creatures equivalent to +1/+1 counters on Kotis. And the reason why this board wipe works because Kotis has indestructible. What do you know? So if an opponent Blasphemous Axe and you have Necrosynthesis attached to Kotis, you're getting all those +1/+1s on Kotis. Very good card. Also, the card says whenever an enchanted creature dies, which it won't, it only can be exiled, look at the top X cards of your library where X is its power. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Cool. Cool. The only way it actually could die is if you sacrificed it. Actually, think about it. And you can sacrifice it to a altar, which altar that you can sacrifice it and mill target player mills so many cards equal to your creature's power. That would be good. Next up, we got Unspeakable Symbol for 1 and 2 black. It's an enchantment. Pay 3 life. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. This is probably going to be your most efficient and fastest way with the extraordinary downfall to make Kotis the Fangkeeper a crazy good creature. You could pay 9 life and give him +3/+3, right? So he's a 5/4. That doesn't sound good, but you didn't spend mana. You didn't spend mana to buff up your creature. And you could do this at instant speed. And you can play with it, give yourself the option to do this accordingly. It's just an option, y'all. Just an option. I feel like some of y'all will hear this and be like, ooh, I don't want to pay life. Cool. You got the option. And honestly, you can give Kotis Infect if you really wanted to. He's indestructible Infect creature. Come on, man. What are we talking about here? Yeah, I should have put that in there. Moving on to cards you have missed. Now, let's talk about when you've triggered Kotis' ability and you casted another player's card. We need payoffs. So let's talk about Tasha the Witch Queen for 3 blue and a black. She's a planeswalker with 4 loyalty counters. She says whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a 3/3 black demon creature token. Yeah. So you cast 3 spells that you don't own, you get to make 3/3 black demon creature tokens. Great card. All right, her +1 ability, draw a card for each opponent, exile up to 1 target instant sorcery card from that player's graveyard, and put a page counter on it. Then her -3. You may cast a spell from 1 card in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. Yeah. So not only does she cast your opponent's spells, she gives you 3/3 black demons. And paired with Kotis, are you just stealing creatures? Stealing spells and making creatures. Great card. Next up, we got Staff of Eden, Vault's Key for 6 mana, legendary artifact. When it enters the battlefield, put target legendary permanent card not named Staff of Eden from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Tap it. Draw a card for each permanent you control but don't own. So if you stole a bunch of cards or spells from your opponent and they're on your side of the battlefield, and remember, Kotis can cast any number of spells. So if you stole a bunch of creatures from your opponents, let's just say 5, you can tap Staff of Eden and draw 5 cards. What? Yeah, great card. Moving on to the summary. So, thank you for watching this video. I'm actually super excited for this commander. I think it works because it has Indestructible. It has Indestructible, and that is going to be a menace. An indestructible creature that can take other players' spells? What are we talking about here? Is this power creep or just creative card design? I think I'm going to go with creative card design on this one. Really fun for this Sultai commander. They're bringing out a bunch of Sultai commanders in this set. And hey, let's try them. Let's brew them. Let me know in the comments below what y'all think about this commander and any card suggestions you do have.